First off, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. I do hope that, as I said earlier, before a couple people jumped on, that you received your coffee. And we are very excited today to be able to talk about roadmap to technology budgeting, where we are going to give you some tips and tools as takeaways to make sure that you are thinking proactively and forward thinking as opposed to focusing on the past. So we have some more people coming in. Shelby's in the background to let them in. We're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. I want to start by introducing myself. I am one of the two presenters here today. For those listening, I'm Ted Clouser. I'm the president and CEO of PCA Technology Solutions. I started at the old age of 16 in technology, where I grew up in central Pennsylvania and started my own computer firm, and ended up moving to Little Rock in 1996, where I joined PC Assistants. And my wife, Stephanie, and I purchased the business in 2018. We rebranded to PCA Technology Solutions. And we are focused on cybersecurity, managed IT services, virtual CIO, and voice over IP. And then we also have David Witt. David's on the call. I'd like him to just introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Witt. I am the Business Solution Specialist here at PCA Technology Solutions. I also talk really fast, so sometimes I'll just have to slow down. I grew up in Bergman, Arkansas, a small little town outside of Harrison. I graduated high school there, and I went to study information science at UALR. That's where I met Ted, and I got introduced here at PCA, and it's just been it's been a wonderful experience, and happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're happy to have you. Okay, just some housekeeping. A reminder, we should have all of your microphones muted, but just make sure that it is muted. And then we do have the chat session on the right that we will be monitoring. So if you have questions, please enter them in there, and then we'll actually take them at the end of the session. So areas of focus today. We're really two primary areas that we're going to focus on. First is budget. So we're going to talk about where we believe that you should be as far as the amount of revenue that you are dedicating to technology. Keep in mind that this does include personnel costs. It does include managed IT costs for organizations like us as well. So we're going to talk about what that percentage spend should be. And then we are going to spend a significant amount of time on what a roadmap should look like, with the fact that we believe you need to be thinking out 7 years and really have a strategic plan of where your technology is going to go. So our objectives for today. We are going to actually give you those numbers that we talked about of where your percentage needs to be as far as revenue is concerned. We're going to drill down specifically on what those types of areas are and how we can focus on making sure that you are spending accordingly. And then ultimately, what's the roadmap? What does that look like? And why do you need it?
All right, guys. Well, we'll start here by looking at some technology budgeting and kind of what all that focuses on. So with that, we'll go ahead and start by defining technology. Ted, can you? Yeah, there we go. All right, so when you think of what technology envelops inside your company, you think of, your software. That'll be your 365 PDF editors, ERPs, cloud storage. Through COVID, a lot of people have moved things such as Dropbox or SharePoint. Your data backups and disaster recovery, that's the bread and butter of security is, you don't know what attack vectors may come through. So make sure you have a good data backup and disaster recovery plan is very key in your technology. Security, this is everything from your firewalls to what can we do to secure endpoints, accounts, multi-factor authentication and such. Training and consulting, we partner with KnowBe4, and anybody who's done that KnowBe4 training knows how significant training your end user can be. And then hardware, that's your servers, your workstations, your phones, your tablets, everything that you can tangibly touch.
Yeah, and it's interesting, before we go on to the next slide, one of the things that we are constantly doing at PCA in our evolution is making sure that we're partnering with the best of the best. And so David had mentioned Know before, but we actually are in the process of switching to a brand new organization called Hook Security. And so part of what we do for our clients is that we make sure that we're providing those world-class solutions, and sometimes that changes. So, I mean, not long ago, we changed our antivirus vendor because we needed to really go to the next level. So part of what you're doing with your strategy as far as the expense is you are looking for the best of the best, and things you outgrow solutions, and you sometimes evolve past what a solution can do for you. So always be willing to at least have those conversations and think through what might need to change. So how much should I, or you in this case, be spending on technology? I'm sure you're asking yourself that. So let's just dive right in. So 3 to 8% of revenue is what you should spend according to the national average. So generally, smaller organizations, and I would say smaller organizations in the state of Arkansas would be 100 employees or less. Sometimes in a place like Dallas or the larger cities, it could easily be 250 or 500 or less. So small business determination varies. Most medium-sized businesses spend around 4.1% on the technology needs that they need. And 53% of companies plan to increase their IT spend in 2022. So the fact that you are at 5% or 4.1%, we're really seeing the trajectory go upward in what the IT spend is. I actually read a number not long ago that said it should be above 10%. And really, as you factor in your personnel costs or your outsourced IT costs, as well as new computer purchases, cloud purchases, everything involving technology, it certainly can add up. And so what we believe the advanced organizations are doing is that they are investing in technology. And we certainly saw that as far as the pandemic was concerned. Those that pivoted quickly in March of 2020 and successfully, most often we're already investing in technology and we're forward-thinking organizations. And what we want to do as part of this presentation is to make sure that you are doing that same thing. So I want you to view technology as an opportunity. And I don't want you to see it as a hindrance. And historically, that's usually been the way that it is, right? So we see replacing equipment as an expense that we want to push out as long as possible. What we want to say is we want you to think about technology as really raising your game as an organization. How does technology allow you to reach more companies or reach more customers? How does it allow you to provide better service, support better relationships? I want you to really, some of the takeaway notes for this are to think about this as an organization. How do you track what your customer wants? We are actually in the middle of implementing a brand new solution here within our internal organization to be able to have gauges that show us how we're performing in certain levels so that our KPIs are visible and we're transparent throughout the entire organization to help hold everyone accountable. How do you use technology to drive efficiency? One of the slides later, David will talk about automation, which we are big believers in. We want to automate as much as possible. And you'll see that organizations are not spending near the amount that they should on automation. We believe that needs to change. And then ultimately, how does it give you the competitive edge in your industry to put you above your competition?
So as we were preparing this, we were kind of like, we were discussing what are some of these visionary things we want to look at when we're deciding on a budget and we're building out these roadmaps. So, you know, with each individual client and each individual industry is going to be different. So in the very first one there, how will IT change the basis of competition in our industry? And the basis of competition is really just the collection of, you know, what are you offering and what are your clients comparing what you're offering versus your competitor. And that's what helps the customer choose between different competing services. So what you want to focus on there is how to better understand the future of your business environment, where the industry trend is going for your particular sector, and make sure you're staying either in track with where it's going or even be on the forefront and be the one who in your area adjusts where that competition is moving. Some other questions are, what will it take to exceed our customers' expectation in a digital world? Through COVID, we're all having to adapt and adjust on that. So, we're constantly seeing what it's like to talk like this over a webcam, or advertisement is a large part of that, and just different things throughout that, as well as meeting clients' needs for accessibility. Does our business plan reflect the full potential of technology to improve our business? So how are you using your existing tools to their fullest capability to really get the most out of them for your organization, as well as what may you need to implement into your business to get you where you need to be? How will IT improve our operational and strategic ability? How do we have the capability to deliver a value from IT? And are we comfortable with our level of IT risk? So this kind of transitions into, where are people spending their money? And this is a 2020 study, 2020 graphic here. So you'll see a lot of people are starting to invest into cloud applications, cloud infrastructure. A lot of that comes from just really the flexibility of being able to work from anywhere with COVID, as well as, you're not reliant on your internal network. You're more so reliant on your vendor and their cloud solutions. But as you move down that list, you got data analytics. How are we performing? What are things we can do better? This KPIs and stuff that Ted was mentioning, people are investing in that to kind of see where are we not performing the best, and where can we invest into IT to show us where we can do better. Your systems integrity, DR, business continuity, legacy systems, IT shared solutions, and automation. So right there's that 4% that Ted was talking about, automation, and automation is such a huge part of even what we do here at PCA. If something comes up, we have things on the back end to help us solve that quicker, so that you come to a faster resolution.
And it's an interesting slide to me, David. And for anybody that's followed my career for any amount of time, a decade ago, I was very public about the cloud not being the silver bullet. And I went back because there was an article in Arkansas Business where I really talked hard about it. And so I had to go back and read that article recently and say, okay, do I actually stand behind everything I said, or was it all wrong? Did I get it wrong? And the truth is that at that time, what I was trying to say is it's too early. Don't jump on board quite yet. And here we are today. COVID has proved the value of the cloud. And over that past decade, we've seen cloud providers secure themselves more. We've seen Microsoft evolve into a premier leader, and Amazon. We've seen those organizations show the value of what the cloud can bring, but you still need to manage the cloud. One of the things that at that time is that we were being told it was a set it and forget it mentality, and it's not. You just transfer the servers from on-premise at your office to in the cloud. You still are responsible for managing and maintaining the security aspect of it. So you're seeing the spend increase, and one of the things that we've focused on as a leader is trying to say, how do we actually manage and maintain that for you as an organization? Because let's be honest, can you really tell me every single piece of data you have out there in the cloud right now? I'm not sure that I could about my own organization. So we are really working to say, how do we give you the tools to be able to report on that, to have the dashboards, and to make sure that you're spending appropriately?
All right, so now we get to kind of some of the little more involved items when we're describing budget. So some critical items that need to be included in your technology budget, and that you have to make sure that you focus on, will be things like antivirus or EDR. Cybersecurity will always be a cat and mouse game. And as attackers continue to evolve and grow and get better at, implementing ransomware and such, you have to have a better defense to come to that. So traditional antivirus solutions just don't keep up anymore. The definition-based antivirus solutions or cloud-based antivirus solutions, they're not competitive against attackers. So that's why here at PCA, we made a transition from a traditional AV to EDR. That's just the forefront of technology, because malicious attackers will use AI-based scripts and such to get in your computer And so in order to combat that, you have to have an AI-based solution to detect what's going on, protect your system, and respond accordingly. The next critical item on technology essentials will be your backup solutions. Your cloud, your on-site quick recovery, your speed vaults. That's I would say, that would probably be over even antivirus solutions, because you can protect all you want, but there's still maybe one potential vector or one potential user that will slip up. What is it? 95% of attacks come from phishing campaigns. Is that right, Ted?
Yeah, it's outrageously high.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, your weakest link will always be some end user clicking on a link. So backup solutions are very critical for your server, your core infrastructure. Connectivity, that'll be not just your ISP, but even considering things like SD-WAN, some load balancing maybe between two ISPs or some failover, depending on what sort of continuity your business needs. Managed firewalls. As you guys know, we are a WatchGuard certified expert solutions. That's sorry. But no, your firewall can do a lot more for you than just, restrict things to zero access. They have things such as content filter. They have a bunch of content filtering to protect end users from malicious sites. They have DLP to strip out, protected information that may be sent over your network. Business email. A lot of us have already made the cut over to Office 365, but that's something that, you still have to consider into your budget, because it's necessary. The reporting on it is above and beyond anything else out there. So business email needs to be definitely considered there. Your network infrastructure, that'll be things such as your switches, your wireless access points, your firewall, maybe some runs or some cleanups on that, and then layered security. And for the layered security portion, I will hand that off to our resident expert, Ted.
I want to focus on this slide. I appreciate that, David. Focus on the slide a little bit before we transfer. So first off, I'm sure your industry is the same way. We have a lot of acronyms. And so I want to be sure to talk through. EDR is endpoint detection and response. And really what that means is it is the next generation of antivirus protection. It's really about anomalies that are occurring on the system that need to trigger warnings and potentially offer experts to engage to say, okay, what is going on? Why is this happening? The days of trying to fight off viruses are out the window. It is much more advanced now. It goes into ransomware and what have you, which is why the backup and disaster recovery solutions are so critical. Business email, which, as David mentioned, a lot of people have already migrated to Office 365. Part of your technology strategy needs to be knowing that Office 365 is actually increasing its price now for the first time, I believe, since they've actually come out. Whatever it is, it's long overdue, and I knew that it would be coming at some point. So being able to factor, what if you have 100 mailboxes or 500 mailboxes in Office 365? You're going to have an increase that you need to plan for next year. And so much of technology is being ahead, being aware of where it is that you need to invest your spend. And then the layers of security that David touched on, I'm going to talk about in the next slide. But first, I want to tell you a story. I'm very, very big on stories. So there is a certification in the cybersecurity world called CISSP. It is considered by many as the elite certification. There are less than 100,000 certified people in the United States and 150,000 worldwide. So about 2 or 3 years ago, I really started talking to my wife and said, I really think that, I think I could do this certification. I'm one of those overachievers. And so I pretty much say, okay, I'm not certified, but I'm just going to go straight to the top. So we talked about it off and on, and she kept trying to encourage me. And this year, she really pushed me. And she said, you need to get that certification. You are literally speaking across the world, and you do not have the letters to back what you're saying. So I said, yeah, that's probably valid. And so there are a lot of Arkansans on this call, so you'll know the team that I'm about to talk about. But I'm a big sports fan, and I grew up outside Penn State University, so I'm a huge Nittany Lion fan. And earlier in the year, when Arkansas was undefeated, so was Penn State. And I was convinced that Penn State was on the road to the college football playoffs. So my wife said to me, I'll make you a deal. You schedule the test. You don't even need to pass. If you schedule the test, we will go to the Penn State bowl game. And I'm like, oh my gosh, college football playoffs, national championship, I'm in. So I scheduled the test. First week in November, I think it was November 8th. I'm sorry, first week in October. And I scheduled it for 5 weeks later. So I doubled down. I spent those next 5 weeks studying on the specifics of what I anticipated on that test. And I passed. So I am a CISSP. Penn State is not going to the playoffs, but they are, ironically, playing the Arkansas Razorbacks. So I will be in Tampa on January 1st to celebrate. And I'm not sure Penn State can beat the Hogs, but that's okay. It's going to be fun. So I say all that to say I actually have letters to confirm that I know what I'm talking about. So I want to talk about layers. In my career, I've talked often about the fact that layers are so critical to cybersecurity. You need to protect at the perimeter, which is where you get into your firewalls. You need to protect at the device, which is where you get into two-factor, but also endpoint protection, which is what we talked about earlier. So if you're protecting at multiple layers and then you add in email protection, that is how you become most secure. And as we've seen over the years, nothing is 100% foolproof. If the government can be broken into, so can you. What we're trying to do is deter the hacker or deter the criminal from your organization to move on. Think of it much like layers as you would on your house. If you want to secure your house, you lock the door. If you want to add a layer, you add a deadbolt, then a chain, then cameras, now a security system, now notifications to your mobile device and automation of calling the police and fire. It's no different in your virtual world as it is your physical world. So proper cyber hygiene protects you and the perimeter with a combination of managing vulnerabilities. Do you understand where your weaknesses are? If not, you need to. How are you protecting against malware? Things like next generation EDR solutions that are less about trying to detect known viruses and more about looking for anomalies are necessary. Social engineering. Are you training your users? As David mentioned, we, the users, are the problem. When we get click happy, when we open up things that we shouldn't, we are allowing them to come in that front door. We have removed the chain, opened the deadbolt, unlocked the door, and we've let them in. So you need to train your users, but perhaps more importantly, you need to create an environment where they want to tell you if they've clicked on something that they shouldn't. We must have an environment that says, please tell me, because the sooner you tell me, the faster I can react. Ransomware has certainly been in the news for the past several years. Hopefully you're aware of it, but you haven't been impacted by it. Ransomware is just the old-fashioned, they used to do it back in the day where they'd steal things and request a ransom. Now it's about data, but now it's going to the next level, and there's things like ransomware as a service. It's bad. So the only way, not the only way, the best way to protect from that are to have layers, but the disaster recovery is essential. You must know the status of your backup and recovery. Phishing, as we talked about, is a legitimate threat, and we want to make sure that your users are trained. 0 days are one of those where you have to have an organization that really is there to support you, to protect you against a 0 day. A 0 day simply means a vulnerability is detected today that no one knows about. So we could have a 0 day tomorrow that would be the first instance. The way that you've got to protect yourself is to be vigilant in patching and overall security posture. And then human error. So much of the problems are due to lack of configuration by a human or improper coding in hardware and software by another human. So I want to talk real briefly about the CISSP certification domains, which is what I talked about, only because they are applicable in the business world. The thing about this certification is it takes cybersecurity and it molds it together with business to be able to create a strategy for your cyber. So the security risk and management is simply saying, okay, what am I under compliance to? What are my principles that I need to make sure that I am factoring in? What about my personnel? What about my policies? Are my people aware? So you have to know your risk and you have to manage your risk. And the way to do that is to understand your assets. So the second piece is how to identify and classify every digital asset that I have. How do I manage retention when something leaves? How do I handle data? How do I protect privacy? And so you have to have a very good understanding of that. Third domain is security architecture. And that's where you get into cryptography, which is what ransomware is based around. But it's also about securing your own data. So when we look at encrypted hard drives or encrypted email solutions, those are ways to protect sensitive data that you need to also have a handle on. And so again, that comes down to asset management. Do you know what assets are sending and receiving data within your organization? That's step one. The fourth domain is communications and network security. That is securing every channel, and that is VPNs, that is your internet circuits, how you're communicating back and forth between networks and the infrastructure to do that. The fifth domain is identity and access. Identity and access management. How are you controlling who has access to sensitive data, to your data at all? How are you managing and authenticating? And how are you dealing with offboarding people when they leave your organization? The sixth domain is a security assessment and testing. Are you doing yearly vulnerability testing and penetration tests? If not, it needs to be a part of your strategy. The way to protect yourself is to understand your risk. The seventh domain is security operations. That is all about how you deal with incidents, how you even evaluate physical security, how you manage your personnel in the event of a disaster. Do you have a business continuity plan? If something happens to your environment, do you know what you're going to do? And then the last piece is software development security. And this is really all about how software is designed in the software development life cycle. What is the security impact? Software organizations, unfortunately, historically have not put security first. And you need to put security first. One of the other things that I'm extremely proud of here at PCA is about 2 months ago, we were recognized as the number one, the top managed security solutions provider in the state of Arkansas and 169th in the world. And the reason why is that we made a shift several years ago to say, we're not going to be the traditional MSP. We are going to make security first in all that we do.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ted. So now we're going to look at things a little bit more targeted towards the roadmap and some budgeting. But first, a couple of budgeting stats. The projected biggest IT challenge for 2022 outside of supply chain and product shortages is inventory and license tracking. As Ted had just mentioned, 365 for the first time in a long time are increasing their license charges. And keeping up with that, it can be quite a bear. We have a pretty good system down here to make sure we're on top of licenses coming in and out, but that goes even for your ERPs, that goes for any sort of web application you may be using. So I can definitely understand how that will be one of the biggest challenges. Tech budget forecasting, as you can see here, the decrease from hardware over the last 3 years and the increase of cloud. So that's not only just your cloud applications, but your cloud server storage. Software seems to retain about the same, but a lot of those will transition into your cloud applications as well. And then your managed solutions. All right, now let's talk about our technology roadmaps. A few months ago, I would say earlier this year, I met with Ted and I said, we're pulling these reports and we're meeting with people and we're trying to find the best way to cycle out some of this old hardware and provide solutions along. It almost felt like it was in real time. We were doing planning ahead, but we were following up on meetings. So I was like, what if we build a plan, a roadmap, so that every year we have an expected this is what we need to do this year. These are some challenges we have this year and the next year. And the benefits for it will be, our clients have a known expected cost for not only what workstations are we replacing this year, but maybe what are some security things we need to implement this year, or security features, or like vulnerability scans we can implement as well. So with that, we decided, let's do a 7-year plan. And the 7-year plan was focused around what is the average life cycle of some hardware. And so with that, we also want to make sure we're implementing these items that we discussed earlier, mostly because some of this stuff is going to be, everything on this list here is going to be something you deal with every year. You're going to be paying for your software every year in your budget, your cloud storage, your data backup, your security, your training and hardware. That's something that's going to be, you need to work into your budget each year. So for this, we're going to give an example roadmap. So Billy, right here, nice hair, Billy, looks a little bit like Ted, is the CEO of company XYZ. So we're going to take a look at Billy's current state of his network, and we're going to go through a mock 7-year roadmap for him. So when we start this process of building out a 7-year plan, we say, okay, what is the state of the client's network? What do they currently have? So this is their present inventory. They have server 01, which is housing 2 virtuals. It's got server 2002 and a server 2003. Server 2002, you can see there has a server 2008 R2 standard operating system, which is end of life. So the notes there are saying, over the year, we've seen that this host is having some stability issues. There seems to be power issues, maybe a bad motherboard, as well as, the operating system is old. It's got the age of the machine and highly recommend to replace that soon. And then we have server 2004, which has got a server 2012 standard license on it, which becomes end of life in actually 2 years. Along with the server inventory, we also have all of the workstations across their multiple locations. So as you can see, this is probably a mid-sized company, probably about 40 workstations along with those servers. So what we want to tackle first is we'll say, year 1, let's go ahead and get rid of those 2008 R2 servers and replace that host. We've had increased stability issues with them. You can't function if your server's down. So let's replace the host, get it up, and let's get them on an operating system that is supported by Windows, is getting constant patches, and we'll start the hardware cycle here. Now, as we go through this, I also want you guys to remember that what we have listed here on the years will mostly be your hardware as your servers and your workstations and such, but there will be different things you'll want to strategize throughout that will be, 365 license increases. You open a new branch, what's the cost going to be for that? And planning for those along with those other items, such as your cloud software, cloud storage, data backup, security, training, and hardware.
One of the things, just to jump in real quick, David, is, in this example for Billy and his environment, we are talking about some physical infrastructure. But that could just as easily be a virtual server up in the cloud. It could be Microsoft Azure up in the cloud. And so this sample is to talk about Billy and his environment, but we also look at each scenario and say, what is best for your environment?
Absolutely. And, different companies will have different budgets, and they'll have, different amount of workstations they need to handle. And they'll have different levels of IT risk associated with their what they can do with their budgeting. So on this example, the next thing I looked at too, we were looking at those operating systems for end of lives. Billy here, he wasn't a part of the Windows 10 upgrade. So we need to replace these workstations. We look at not only is it Windows 7, because you can still upgrade 7 to 10, right? But we look at the OS installation dates. We look at how old the hardware is. So all of these workstations are 7 years old at least on some of these. And so the next thing we want to tackle in that year 2 will be like replacement of these particular Windows 7 workstations at location 1. And then as we kind of rotate through, then you'll have the next year, we'll have location 2, and we'll work through these workstations. You can see there in red, some of these have 4 gigs of RAM. They need 8 gigs of RAM. I don't know why that one's got 8 gigs of RAM highlighted, but as you reach year 3, these are going to be now old enough that they're 7 years old and need to be replaced. So what we're trying to build out with the 7-year plan is just a vision of what am I going to need to replace every year throughout these years. And then year 4.
Real quick, I think that's a misclick because there's a 4 gig right above. So we'll make sure we tell Billy that it's a misclick.
I'll tell Billy. And it was actually me who highlighted that, so I'll tell David. So some other things you want to think about too is, some of your host replacements. There's several options. Ted is talking about moving to the cloud. So we had 2 physical hosts on site. We had server 01, which was housing 2 virtuals, and now we have server 4, which is another physical server. So let's say server 4 is a application server. When it comes to year 4, that's when we start having discussions. Are these applications that we can move to the cloud? Or if we put another host on site, let's consider maybe some continuity. Let's say the server 01 we replaced was to die tomorrow. We want to build a second physical host on site that we can spin up some virtuals on this new server 04. So if you have any sort of, physical issue, we have a place to recover it to. Server 5, we're back at it. We're replacing some more Windows workstations. This seems like a fairly small amount of workstations for this organization. So maybe this year we can also work in some additional security training. Because what we'd want to do is, let's say there's 10 workstations here. That's 3 workstations a quarter. We can do all 10 at the beginning of the year. But if you budget it out and you stagger them correctly, that allows you to get a better use of your IT budget. Year 6, network cleanup. This is something that I feel like kind of falls on the wayside in some organizations is, how long are we going to run our switches? Are we going to run them till they burn up and then our entire organization is down? With supply chain issues, we may not have those on hand to bring in, and that can lead to some further issues. So staying on top of the life cycles of your switches, your firewalls, updating your wireless access points. Wi-Fi 6.0 is out. It is a lot more secure than a lot of these older access points that are out there. And depending on how up to date your network is by year 6, this is again another time. Can we put in some more training? Can we put in some more security features? Let's roll out multi-factor. Let's do some external penetration tests or overall baseline infrastructure tests.
Well, I think one thing that's important to note too, as David is talking through it, is that every organization is different. So obviously, if you have the financial means, we might want to we want to make sure that you're trued up first. So when we talk about security and we talk about upgraded wireless access points, this is a revolving cycle. So potentially that could be something you do right out of the gate, depending on your need.
Year 7, here we are. We're at the end of our 7-year plan. We are, replacing the last of our desktops at location 3, but where do we start? We start right back at year 1. That's the wonderful thing about building out this plan and having this organized so that what every year your operational or your capital expenses may be for workstations. You can plan ahead of time. You can budget ahead of time. You can see, this increased for licensing increased for this. Or maybe this next year we don't replace these workstations and we move maybe to tablets or something. It really depends on your industry. But year 7, here we are. The last of our workstations are all up to date, and we're back at year 1. So building that living life cycle of replacing your hardware, it provides several benefits beyond just keeping you on newer technology.
Perfect. Thanks, David. So we are coming up towards the end of this presentation. So I want to reiterate, I would encourage you to throw any questions or comments in the chat that you want us to talk through. And we're here to help. This is your time, and we want to help direct you in the path as best we can. So the things to consider, we've talked about a lot. The first and the easiest to consider is your hardware, such as your desktops, your switches, your firewall. Those are the things that you can pretty easily get a handle on. For those that are working with us, we have those in our asset inventory, so it's very simple for us to run some reports. Next is software. It's a bit more challenging. When I talked earlier about some of the products that we are looking at here at PCA, it's to get a better handle on the cloud side of things, what it is that you're spending per month in cloud. Is it really what it needs to be? How easy is it for you to have an Office 365? In Billy's example organization, for Billy to have an Office 365 license for an employee that is no longer there. It's very possible. So management of that is critical. The storage, this is as you've grown. I've read some stats, I can't even keep up, but I remember when I started in the mid 90s and we had megabytes of hard drives. And now, that's nothing. Obviously, we are in gigabytes and the next level of data. The storage needs are incredible, which also means we have stronger disaster recovery needs because we have more data, we have more applications, we have more points of failure than ever before. So how do we recover from a disaster? You need to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, we can help. And the security piece of it, I could talk about for hours. It is so essential to think about things in layers. You and I are threats, we are at risk to threats. We use a hashtag, the threats are real. And that is because we believe at PCA, everybody is susceptible. And part of the way that we do business, I mentioned earlier about us being 169th in the world. Just to give you some perspective, number one in that security space is AT&T. Number 4 or 5 is Robert Herjavec. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. The guy on the right on Shark Tank, his cybersecurity company. So we put ourselves on a map by doing that. So we have to make a business decision. Is that worth it? Is it worth putting ourselves at a point where we could be attacked? Your organization is the same way. As you grow, as you see success, you are putting yourself on an attack vector. So security and the layers are critical for your business. Coaching. We talk a lot about coaching here at PCA. We're actually in the middle of revamping our website. We are really getting on board with this sports analogy concept. Everything that we're doing, we're really thinking about a sports team. Even in our delivery, we believe that you need critical pieces. If you need a quarterback, the last thing we need to do is send in a safety to try to help you with your need. And so it's the same concept with a budget. As David and I are working closely to make sure that we are working with our clients to say, here's how you project for the future. We want to be a part of helping you. And then the last piece of this consideration is the data communications side. Do you have adequate bandwidth? Do you know what you're spending for your bandwidth? How about your mobile plans? All of these things need to be managed or they can get out of hand rather quickly. All right, so I see we have a question. Appreciate you jumping in there, Tom. Do you recommend Microsoft 365 Standard or Premium, and why? What backup solutions do you recommend? Do you recommend upgrading to Wi-Fi 6, and what products do you use? Do you recommend WatchGuard Basic Security or Total Security? David, I'm going to give you most of those, except I'm going to jump on the WatchGuard. I recommend Total Security hands down because more is better. I don't want basic anything. Yes, it costs more, but what does a breach cost? What we want to do is invest on the front end so we don't have to invest on the back end.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Total Security has additional features. I was mentioning earlier, it's got that DLP. It's got all those. It's got content filtering, all these additional wonderful programs that WatchGuard has worked on to get and prepare for the firewall. For 365, you can have standard or premium. It really depends on your organization. I would say don't overpay. There are other options out there. We're partnered with AppRiver, Zix, and if there are particular features in there, you can possibly find them without having to get the Mercedes Benz. So you can definitely start with the standard, and we could discuss kind of what you're needing for that without having to go fully to the premium. Backup solutions. Currently, we are using Enable Backup. There's a lot of wonderful options out there. Enable Backup ties with our RMM, so we have immediate reporting. All of that's on the same dashboard, single pane of glass, as well as with it, we're able to run reports to see that a backup will restore to the login screen. So some backups, such as Unitrends and such that we've transitioned away from, don't allow that option without it being an additional pay feature. So I definitely would recommend enable backup. And then Wi-Fi 6. WatchGuard has come out with some Wi-Fi 6 products. HP's Aruba has come out with Wi-Fi 6. It's got higher speeds. It allows devices to talk without so much network traffic, bogging it down. And I think those are the two that we sell for that, right, Ted? Between Aruba and WatchGuard.
Yes, we've been through a lot of wireless solutions over the years. I mean, there's a lot of really challenging ones to put in place. But those are the two that we've currently landed on. Ubiquiti is another decent one. There are a lot of solutions out there. I talk often about the fact that in IT, so much of it is about your partnership and your preference. It's like if I was here telling you that a Mercedes is the best car, but you think BMW is. They're great cars. It's really about how you're getting the back-end support. And to go back and touch a little bit about security, again, you're going to hear me often talk about security because I'm passionate about it. But the right amount, no, sorry, how much security you need is a question you have to ask yourself. Unfortunately, the answer is just the right amount. So you don't want too much, you don't want too little. So the value of the total security, to go back to Tom's question, is basic security is not enough. All of total security might be too much, but by having all of it, you can back off and you can make sure that you implement the things that you need. All right, appreciate that question, Tom. So Zach has asked, what options do you have for supporting those that want to move away from Microsoft's constant subscription fees? Do you work with other basic computer software? Do you work with LibreOffice or Google Docs? Are there other more secure options for sharing documents in a business? I will say that remember that anything that is free means you are the product. So you need to factor that in as you're making a business decision. I know that Google has the business apps platform that you pay for. I'll let David talk about his thoughts on it. Part of my thoughts are biased. I simply don't think Google has our best interest in mind. Now, anyone on this call could also say, well, you think Microsoft does? And my answer might be probably not, but I feel less strongly about Microsoft than I do Google. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. So, G Suite has wonderful offerings depending on the size of your organization. But there's still a price tag with free. That there's limitations to it. A lot of people have issues implementing it into various different parts of their organization. And some people that we've transitioned to Google, we move them over and 2 years later, we're moving them right back because it doesn't have the functionality that Microsoft allows. We could definitely support Google Docs and, your G Suite and Libra. But there will be some limitations to that software that Microsoft and its community has grown and expanded to kind of cover. And then are there other more secure options for sharing documents in a business? A lot of people are using SharePoint now, but there are some other ones. We've been testing the waters on some. We just recently are moving a client to CenterStack. Correct.
So Cameron jumped in. David and I are laughing because Cameron said no one who uses Excel on a regular basis is happy with Sheets. And I really think, my daughter, who is 21, grew up in a Google world. She is more accepting, I think, of Sheets limitations and some of these other products and their limitations. Anyone who's a Microsoft user, that's a power user, tends to be frustrated with some of those limitations.
Right. And the other part of that too is, as is with a lot of things, they've moved to subscription based. A lot of people don't like it. And, a lot of it's just upfront money and you don't own the product. And, that's definitely a headache, but that's where the market has trended too.
It's become a rent versus an own mentality. And the market really set itself up for that. It's been doing this for a decade. So, I mean, there's many reasons to do it, but at the end of the day, organizations are in business to make money, and it's more profitable. Let's just call a spade, right? It is more profitable for Microsoft to do the subscription based than it is for them to sell licenses that they simply can't and don't track. So you may be using a pirated version. The benefit, however, is the fact that you are constantly updated. And in theory, you should be more secure because of that. So it's a give and take, but it's the world that we live in. So the key is to manage it and to make sure that you have just the right amount of product.
Absolutely.
Appreciate everybody's comments and questions. Again, we have just a few more minutes. I do value everyone's time that is on here. I know that you're busy. I know that you are running your organizations. Please know that we at PCA are thankful that you're here, and I'm thankful for those that have taken the time to hold this as a priority. From our perspective, we want to help. We want to make sure that you are able to rest easier at night, and part of it is we recognize that you need experts like PCA to be able to come alongside you and help you put those things in place. So again, I see Cameron's typing, so I don't want to go ahead and jump off until that. Oh, here we go. Are you able to help with prepping for an IT audit by CISA? Absolutely. And part of it is I just did a very detailed Department of Defense response not long ago for a client. And, it was right during the time that I was going through my CSSP. And so now that I have those letters, they'll actually value what I say. So we're happy to help in any way, be a part of that. All right. Well, again, I appreciate everyone on this call so much. Feel free to email us, call us. We are going to work to make this presentation available. I think Shelby and our team are going to make sure that it's emailed out for you to leverage internally. But again, thank you for your time today. I hope you have an amazing week, and see ya.
Thanks, everyone.